Hey geometry students, we're starting a new section today. This is all about parallelograms. Kind of fun to say, right? Parallelograms. Alright, so we're going to talk through some of the properties of parallelograms. There's 4 main ones that we want to talk about, and then we're going to go through some problems where we actually look at those properties and what they can do for us. So the first thing is that both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Makes sense, right? That kind of defines a parallelogram. That's why it's got the word parallel in it. So both of my opposite side pairs, wow, hopefully you can draw better than I can. Our goal here is that both pairs of opposite sides be parallel. That's what makes a parallelogram. So the top and the bottom, so these are opposite sides here, the ones across from each other, those would be parallel. And then the other opposite set of sides, so these ones, would also be parallel. So that's a parallelogram when both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Okay, then the second thing, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Or equal. So if I have a parallelogram, this side's going to be the same length as this side. This side is going to be the same length as this side. Okay. Then we also have both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So if I've got a parallelogram going here, this angle is going to be the same as this angle, since they're opposite from each other. This angle is going to be the same as this angle. Alright, and then the last thing is that the diagonals bisect each other. So remember, bisect means they cut each other in half. So if I have a parallelogram drawn here, the diagonals would be the ones that connect the opposite corners, and they cut each other in half. So this one cuts this diagonal into 2 equal pieces, so this and this are the same. And then the same thing going the other direction. This one also cuts this one into 2 equal pieces. So with parallelograms, there's going to be a lot of setting things equal to each other. That's our big theme here. Okay. So then, let's look at a couple of different examples. First one. So each example can be done by looking at a property that it goes with up here. So one of our 4 properties from above. So looking at this picture here, we're dealing with sides. And I know, because of number 2 here, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So that means that this side is congruent to this side. So all we have to do here is set those 2 sides equal to one another. So I'm going to go 3x plus 5 equals 6x minus 10. So then we subtract 3x from both sides. We add 10 to both sides. And we divide by 3 on both sides. So we're left with x being 5. Alright, so that's one thing we can do with our parallelogram. Alright, we're going to jump down to example 3 here, and then we'll catch example 1 and 2 in a moment. So for example 3, we know from step 3 up here, from our third property, both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So if I look down here, these 2 are opposite angles. They're in opposite corners across from each other. So they're going to be equal to each other. So all I have to do is go 87 equals x plus 29. And then we subtract 29 from both sides, and 87 minus 29 is 58. So we know x equals 58. Okay. So then we're going to jump over to example 4 here. Example 4 comes from property 4. The diagonals bisect each other. So they cut each other in half, making 2 equal sides here, 2 equal sides here. So if I look at this picture, we've got our diagonals. This diagonal, this part of the diagonal is equal to this part of the diagonal. So to solve this, I'm just going to set those two things equal to each other. So we're going to go x plus 40 equals 2x plus 18. So then I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Subtract 18 from both sides. And we get that x is 22. Okay. Example 2, the last one we're going to do, so it's not really example 2, I guess. This is more like example 4. Is the only situation where we're not going to be setting things equal to each other. Example 2, instead, we're going to add to 180, and here's why. So if I've got this angle here and this angle here, this one's 5x, this one's 2x plus 12, I know that the angles across from each other are congruent, right? So angles across from each other, these two are congruent, these two are congruent. So we can think about this in terms of the lines being parallel. So if I think of this as parallel lines cut by a transversal, like we talked about in concept 5, these two angles here are consecutive interior, and consecutive interior angles add to 180. So the long and short of it is, anytime on a parallelogram you're dealing with angles that are not equal, so they're not the opposite angles, if you're dealing with ones that follow one another that are consecutive like this, that's the case where you'll add them to 180. So I'm going to take 5x plus 2x plus 12 equals 180. So then I'll combine my like terms over here. 5 and 2 is 7. Minus 12 on both sides. And then 168 divided by 7, because we're going to divide by 7 on both sides. We get x is 24. So that's the only case where you're not going to set things equal with parallelograms. Every single other time you'll be setting things equal. Okay, so go ahead and turn the page. So these are some more simple problems that we can kind of go through and fill out, right? So angles are either going to be equal to each other or they're going to add to 180. So if we look at number 1, these angles are in opposite corners. We're looking for this angle. That tells me that they are equal to each other. So the angle that we're missing here is 135 degrees, just like this angle was here. Number 2 is kind of the opposite way. So this angle and the angle that we're looking for are not in opposite corners. They're in corners that are next to each other. So in this case, I'll take 180 and subtract 70. And we get 110 degrees. So that's another kind of simpler possibility. So a lot of the problems that you'll see on IXL will be kind of like these. You'll go through and it'll either be equal or it'll be adding to 180. Okay, but most of the time things will be equal to each other. So hopefully that's enough information to get you guys started on IXL. You guys are going to be working on section N4 and it's linked in Google Classroom. So go ahead and get started on that. If you have questions, I'll be back tomorrow, so I'll talk to you then. All right, have fun.